brings us to part of why I thought of you. I was watching Raw this week, and they had a segment with The Miz, who I don't mind, and Bryan Danielson, or Daniel Bryan, whatever they're calling him, who I don't think anybody on the line would deny is a great worker. I mean, amazing in the ring. And it just seemed so uncomfortable to me, and it went on for so long that even though I like both guys, I started thinking about the wrestlers that are watching this, that are currently training, that are currently trying to get ready to make it to that show, to the big time. And thinking about the training that must go involved in that, because it has to be different than it was in the 70s and 80s and even into the 90s, where you learned a lot of in-ring stuff. I think nowadays you almost have to be an actor more than a wrestler, because they have you talking so much more than wrestling.
Well, at IWF Wrestling School here in West Patterson, New Jersey, we actually advise the current students and graduates that train in our program to not watch Raw or SmackDown or current WWE programming or current TNA programming, because as WWE readily admits, they are not professional wrestling. They are entertainment. It is a reality show that happens to be about wrestling. Some weeks you wonder why they even bother to set up the ring, because it's all backstage skits or hokey-looking high school acting, and the times have changed. The days of professional wrestling as we knew it in the 70s, 80s, and, 90s, the Attitude Era, those days are over. It's just Hollywood writers, Hollywood scripts. They're trying to compete with Law and Order and 24 and Lost and American Idol. They are all entertainment, and when you get to that level, I mean, we're lucky enough to have had a couple guys make it to the WWE. We have one of our graduates, Darren Ryan, who is part of Nexus, and we now have Fadi the Arabian Bull training in Florida Championship Wrestling. And when these guys were signed by WWE, they were told, basically, when you go out to perform, you have to forget about everything you learned in professional wrestling, and everything is choreographed move by move. The speaking and promos and verbiage is planned word for word what they're going to say. It's entertainment. They're given scripts. And these guys aren't trained actors, like you said. They'd be better off going to acting school than wrestling school. And the programs come off looking hokey, and that's why the UFC is whipping the ass of WWE. Because
they stole the formula.
Guys like, whether the demographic is ages 18 to 34 or ages 35 to 54, we want to see two guys in the ring fighting. I have to like one guy, James. You have to hate one guy. We want to see them competing over championships. It has to be kept simple, which is why 1.2 to 1.5 million people order UFC pay-per-views every month, and why the WWE is only getting 125,000 to 140,000 people ordering their pay-per-views, the lowest numbers in their history. Let's not even mention TNA. There's more people right now listening to this blog talk radio show than order TNA pay-per-views. They're getting 6,000 to 8,000 people ordering their pay-per-views. They're doing something wrong. Nobody's watching. You know why? It looks phony. You have John Cena on live TV throwing punches that miss by 6 to 8 inches. Yet, if you flip over to The Ultimate Fighter, you see Chuck Liddell bashing somebody's teeth down their throat. Now, what male, between the ages of 18 to 54, what do we want to watch? Do we want to see teeth flying out of somebody's jaw, or do we want to see Justin Gabriel or Daniel Bryan throwing fake kicks where they have to slap their thigh to make noise? That'd be like if you watch a movie, you see the actors carrying around the script. It kills the believability. It's not real. Professional wrestling is hokey. That's why nobody watches. Yet, they claim that UFC is not their competition, and they kick their ass every month.
Wow. That was a hell of a testimonial there.
Yeah, I was talking about it with a friend of mine, and we talked about how big boxing was back in the late 90s, and how, boxing did big numbers back then, but the WWF back then was comparable to it, and that's not the case right now, comparing MMA and professional wrestling.
When the WWE went mainstream, it was a national worldwide powerhouse in the mid to late 80s with Hulkamania. they pushed boxing to the back burner. Then the WWE started to lose steam. And in the early to mid-'90s, boxing made a little bit of a comeback. You had Mike Tyson, you had Evander Holyfield, you had Buster Douglas, you had George Foreman make his comeback in 1994. He won the heavyweight boxing championship at the age of 45 years old.
45, yeah.
But then when you had the NWO, Stone Cold, and The Rock, and the Attitude Era, professional wrestling obliterated boxing. Boxing has been wiped off the face of the earth. You had professional wrestling Attitude Era. Well, when that started to die down, and they couldn't find any more different ways to put somebody through a table. I mean, it was all professional wrestling turned into stuntman work. Any idiot off the street could go in and set another guy on fire. There's no art to that. And then when UFC came along, it blew professional wrestling off the face of the earth. I mean, boxing is totally dead. Wrestling just has maybe a little bit of a pulse left. And UFC, mixed martial arts, strike force, whatever the case is, that's here to stay. And I don't know if wrestling is going to recover because, I mean, wrestling, like you said, with these stupid skits that they do, it looks like horrible acting. I mean, I had it on literally for 5 minutes Monday night, and I saw Mr. No Charisma, Ted DiBiase Jr., trying to copy the legendary gimmick that his father did. Are you kidding? Nobody can portray that gimmick, whether it's Ted DiBiase's son or not. He has no charisma. He's horrible. Trying to do some stupid skit with some dumb blonde Maurice, who's just as awful, and they're doing this backstage skit for 5 minutes, and it's painful. I wanted to pick up a sharp object and jam it in my eye, because you can't watch it, and nobody watches. 10, 12 years ago, on a Monday night, any given Monday night, you had 13 to 15 million people watching professional wrestling between Monday Night Raw and WCW Nitro. Fast forward, you now have 4 to 4.5 million people watching wrestling. Where did the other 10 million people go? They lost 10 million people of the professional wrestling audience in only 10 or 11 years. Where'd they go? Why don't they watch? They're watching UFC. They're not watching WWE because it's awful acting, and I'm not afraid to admit it.
Wow.
I mean, did I say anything that you guys don't agree with? I mean, you even said at the top of the program, right at 10 o'clock, that it just looks like bad, horrible acting.
Yeah.
They're asking for time.
The only thing that scares me about that is that people are watching bad, horrible acting, too, when they watch Glee.
Oh, now that's a good point.
Yeah, that's the part that confuses me, because we could say that, and you're right, and I agree with you entirely. And I mean, I think that's the biggest part of the problem. But when you watch Glee, it's almost campy in that it's so bad that you're almost supposed to be in on the joke.
Right. With the WWE, they try to portray that we're supposed to believe this nonsense. They have a midget leprechaun under the ring. Who's going to believe this? Are you kidding? I mean, maybe the 8-year-old in the crowd, who's, it's only the 8-year-olds that are rooting for John Cena. Nobody in their right mind would root for John Cena because everything he does looks horrendous in the ring. I mean, it looks like the kids in junior high in the lunchroom when they play fight and act like they're wrestling and beating each other up. I mean, that's how believable his kicks and punches are. And the WWE just can't understand why the adults boo him. The men don't boo John Cena because they're insecure that he looks good. Maybe the adults in the crowd don't. They boo him because his offensive maneuvers look horrendous. That's why if you went to a movie, whether it was Rocky or Jean-Claude Van Damme, my God, where's he been? Anyway, Arnold Schwarzenegger, when the time comes in that movie for these guys to brawl and punch, if the punching and brawling looked awful, would anybody have rooted for Rocky? Would anybody have rooted for Vin Diesel or Jean-Claude Van Damme or Arnold Schwarzenegger? No. So when John Cena, when it's his turn to start, making that comeback in the ring and throw the punches look horrendous. That's why people boo him, and they don't understand. When Hulk Hogan was throwing punches, it looked real. When Stone Cold was throwing punches, he was laying it in. People were getting hit in the jaw. He wasn't knocking anybody's teeth out. He was doing it in a safe way. But it looked real. You believed Nothing John Cena does looks believable. The top guy has got to be believable, and that's why nobody watches, and that's why nobody outside of the WWE brainwashed audience goes to see his movies. He's not an action hero. Are you kidding me? If he was such a big action hero, don't you think Stallone would have picked him to be in the Expendables rather than Stone Cold? Stone Cold hasn't wrestled in 7 years. He's a box office draw. Nobody's going to see these stupid Ted DiBiase Jr. in the Marine. Anything they try to do outside of wrestling bombs. Just stick with wrestling. They try to do movies, the record company. They try to, the bodybuilding, the football. They're trying to be all things to all people, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah, you got to do what brought you you got to dance with who you brought to the dance, or whatever the hell the phrase is. And it seems to me like we've lost so much of what made wrestling great that it's almost to the point now that it's almost an unnoticeable